Welcome back to the Hearse Whispers. Today we're talking about what's going on in funeral news.
Yes.
So we have some stories from around the country, and Dave and I are just going to chat about it. We're going to talk about what our thoughts are on what's going on.
Yes, we are coming to you live from Bravery Studios in lovely Garfield, New Jersey.
Yes.
With our engineer Marvin.
Yeah.
And I was looking up, it was always a little puzzle to me why it's called the City of Champions, Garfield. Mm-hmm. Now I know. You want to know?
Of course we want to know.
Well, 1939, go back before World War II, Garfield High School was the 1938 New Jersey State football champions, undefeated. They were undefeated in 1939. So however it happened, somebody in Miami decided that the Miami Stingarees, who are also undefeated, the fearsome Miami Stingarees, challenged the Garfield Boilermakers to the National High School Football Championship. So on Christmas night in 1939, the clash of the century took place in the newly constructed Orange Bowl, which has been knocked down for the new Orange Bowl.
Okay.
But back then it was brand new. Mm-hmm. And there's a book by a local sports author, Hank Gola, called The City of Champions. And I kind of read the article, so I know a little bit. But the Garfield Boilermakers, Garfield was very blue collar, full of immigrants. Mm-hmm. They came over, they settled in Garfield. They would have worked in the factories in Patterson and Passaic and Garfield. Miami Stingarees had people come from all over the country to settle in Miami because Miami was up and coming. So it wasn't blue collar like Garfield. So anyway, Garfield goes down to Miami. Hank Gola, I didn't read it, but it's highlighted that Garfield experienced a lot of Jim Crow down there. Mm-hmm. They were totally bowled over by that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the game comes, fantastic game. There's 2 minutes to go. The score is tied 13-13. And the famous Benny Babula.
What a name.
Benny Babula
Love it.
Kicks a field goal with 2 minutes to go. Garfield wins the game 16-13. So that's why they're the City of Champions. National champions.
Still, to this day.
There you go. And we had a funeral a couple of years ago. And I was making the arrangements and somebody mentioned City of Champions, Garfield. And I said, why is it called the City of Champions? And and she gave me a real highlight film. But And then once we started here, I thought, people want to know.
People want to know. What's special about Garfield?
I love it. Yes, they do. So that's the story. You heard it here on the Hearse Whispers.
Heard it here first. Yep. All right. Very cool. So now from Garfield, we are going to Denver, Colorado, where there seems to be a lot of funeral-related news.
That's because nobody has to be licensed.
Nobody has to be licensed in Colorado. I had heard that they were trying to change that. I don't have any specifics on that. But I think due to the issues that arise frequently, they should get to be more regulated. We're highly regulated in New Jersey. Many other states are. So this story comes from the local 12 News in Denver. And I'm just going to read a little bit about it. But a widow, her grief has been reignited after investigators discovered the body of her husband among more than 24 decomposing bodies at a funeral home. And the real problem with that is not just that awful part about him being there. He had passed away over 14 years ago, and she has what she believes are his cremated remains, which she has had for the past 14 years in her home. And the way that she found out was that during the investigation, they were able to identify that this was her husband, and they contacted her and said, unfortunately, one of these people are your husband. And of course, I can't imagine, imagine the phone call to think. No. It's crazy, right? So she says, they say in the article that she was shocked, obviously. But the real question I feel when I read this as a funeral director is like, how do you do that? Right? That's
As the crematory
just
or the funeral home out
kind of
there.
everything, right? So
Yeah.
you're the funeral home, you take someone's person into your care, their loved one, right? And like, what is the thought process behind not following through with whatever the case may be, like whatever
you have to be the lowest of the low, because you gave this grieving widow, an urn with something in it, whether they're really ashes or maybe it was concrete dust or whatever it was.
Right.
And you gave her this and said, here's your husband. She grieves. Meanwhile, he's in the basement. What is
up with that? Right?
Why would you do that? You just got to be a really sick individual.
Yeah.
Big time.
And we were, whenever we hear stories, and Dave and I like always talk about things like this, like we're to say to ourselves, like, first, where's the motivation? Right? It's always somehow the story always somehow comes back to money, but we can't really understand that, because I'm sure this woman paid for whatever the arrangements were supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
But it's scary, but it brings you back to, you have to know who you're dealing with. And for all we know, that was a very reputable place. Who knows? Maybe there was nothing out there, but we always encourage you, meet with your funeral home, meet with them face to face, talk to them on the phone, look them up on Google. I mean, there's a lot out there that you can do research for, but unfortunately, some of these states don't have the regulations that we have. There's no oversight, right?
Yep.
So
I'm just, and what kind of money could they have made?
I don't know. Right? Like,
I just hope they get caught and they can tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. This one comes out of Las Vegas. And this mortuary or funeral home has now been closed because authorities found 146 bodies there. And so they pulled the company's license, which I think that would be, that's the first thing to do, right? Pull the license. But they also had, in one case that was there was a woman who was not cremated for almost 11 months, according to this article. So this is from KLAS in Las Vegas doing the story. So again, it's another situation of not following through. And I feel like a lot of times we hear about this when the crematories are located like on the property or with a funeral home. I don't know if that has something to do with it. Like they're responsible for the whole process. So in New Jersey, we don't have that here. It would be us bringing the person to be cremated to a crematory. So there's another layer here, right, of oversight. Yes. It's a third party that we're operating with. So I feel like that has maybe, don't want to speculate, but that might have something to do with it. It's just that the person just kind of stays in one place, but not making an excuse, just saying.
No.
So the interesting thing about that is paperwork that was provided from this funeral home to families had some interesting wording on it. One of the things it said was that the time frame for cremation was 7 to 28 working days.
Wow, working days. That's over a month.
That's over. Is that mean weekends? And there was another highlighted area about the cremation that I think it says something like at their discretion, like it will be up there to their discretion as, like, I guess in terms of timing and when they would do that. So that's really interesting. I wonder if the 7 to 28 days was like the tiniest fine print that no one could ever read.
I would think so.
Because what would you say if you saw that? If you're signing something, like, why does it take 28 days?
I mean, all the time people ask us, when is mom going to come back?
Yes.
So like, is it say? Tomorrow? Maybe next month?
Yeah. Right. That's a good point. We frequently get people who need or want back the cremated remains. Like, they have something scheduled, or they want things to happen right away. So I can't imagine like a family calling us and us being like, well, maybe 15 more days. Yeah. I'll let you know.
Unless they would have said, 2 or 3 days, and then they'd sign the paperwork and things would be in their care. And then when the family says, "Where's mom?" they said, "Oh, it'll be a couple weeks." Well, you sign the papers.
Right.
You know.
It's kind of like a gotcha, a little bit of a gotcha.
It's a hard business to do gotcha.
It is, but that's why I also wanted to talk about this topic, because this is like the idea of the bad apples, right? This is what's in the news.
Yes.
And sadly, that's what people think about us a lot.
Yeah.
Is, oh, they're out to get us. They're not doing the right thing. And we're always shocked when we read things like this. So
yep. That was like the crematory in Georgia. They years and years and years ago,
yes.
They sent a letter out to all the funeral homes. And I guess in Georgia, things are not close. Like we're not far, but they're in Georgia, I guess it's a ways. Georgia sent letters to all the funeral homes that for a certain fee, which wasn't a bad fee, they would come to the funeral home, get the person, bring them to the crematory, and then bring them back. And whatever it was, a lot of funeral homes said, "Well, that's good," because they all knew the crematory, and then
it was like a transport service, like a transfer service, sort of, all in one. Okay.
And it would save the funeral home hours on the road. So sounded like a good deal. This was the crematory that had people in the lake, and they were buried, and they were all over the place, and national scandal. And all anybody would do is come into the funeral home and say, "How do I know?" And he would say, "Well, there's regulations up here that's not going to happen."
Right.
But sure enough, about 6 months later, when the whole thing was done, we got a letter from a crematory offering that service. But it was all local. But I just thought, wow.
It's like ding, ding, red flag.
Thought of this. What a great idea.
Right.
I mean, it was still a hot topic. So.
Yeah. And it's frustrating when you get asked about that. Like, how do I know this isn't going to happen? And luckily, we can tell you how. We have our procedures. We have everything in order all the time. But
crazy.
It is crazy. In one of our next episodes, we're planning on talking about different types of disposition.
Yes.
Because in New Jersey, they have recently passed the law for terramation.
Yes.
So terramation is an alternative to cremation, where you essentially the person becomes a compost, right? So the body is placed into a specialized container, and we're going to deep dive into like how it works. But organic material is placed inside, and then at the end of the process, the family is left with basically like mulch or dirt, right? And they can take a portion, and it's a lot. It's like in one video I saw, it's like a truckload. And sometimes people want it to come home, or sometimes they'll want to donate it to like a forest or some other type of thing. So things are changing, right? It'll be big. And in New Jersey, it seems that they're going to put this under legalities of a funeral home. So you'll have to be a licensed funeral director to operate this. It won't be like a cemetery or a crematory. So that's going to be really interesting. I wonder how long it's going to take for families to come to us and say, like, "Do you have terramation? Can we do that here?" It's gonna happen, crazy. Right?
Not crazy, but it's another option.
What do you think?
And there's so many options.
What do you
I don't think it's going to be big.
No.
I think it might be big for a little while, but then when people realize that, mom or dad, whoever, is going to come back in plastic bags and their mulch, what do you do with that? What do you do with the mulch? But there will be people who will say, "This is fantastic," and they'll work them into the garden, or they'll do something.
I think it's like,
and
I think it's going to go both ways too. I think you're going to have exactly what you said, and I think you have such a push now, which is because of changing times, for green or earth-friendly, eco-friendly types of dispositions. So I think it's kind of like cremation, right? That was something that was really big on the West Coast in its inception, and then it kind of trickled here. Yeah. And now we're overwhelmingly using cremation. This is also something that started more out west, and I think it's going to work its way here. And Did you ever think in your life there'd
No.
be people becoming compost?
No. We were cutting it because we can launch people into space.
Oh, let's talk about space then, because, you are cutting edge with what you've
Amazing.
done. So next time when we talk about alternatives to disposition, such as terramation, let's continue about space and launching into space, because I don't think that's something a lot of people know is an option.
No. With space and reefs, you can put somebody in a reef.
And that Feeney Funeral Home has had that option.
We do everything.
For years and years and years.
Gems, making people into gems.
We got a lot. Yeah, we have a lot of good stuff.
We have a lot to talk about here at the Hearst Whisperers.
Yes, we do. All right. So thank you for watching the Hearst Whisperers. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.